Oh, no, you don't, says a federal judge in Donald Trump's second effort in 48 hours to fire the federal watchdog responsible for stopping illegal firings. I talked to you earlier about Hampton Dellinger being reinstated by Judge Amy Berman Jackson, who issued a permanent injunction requiring the Trump administration to restore his status as the head of the Office of Special Counsel, which protects federal workers from partisan attacks and from being fired because of whistleblowing. And now another federal judge, just 48 hours later, Judge Rudy Contreras, has decided that Donald Trump illegally, unconstitutionally fired one of the members of the Merit Service Protection Board, which is the other half of the coin that protects civil service workers after a 1978 Reform Act was passed, the Civil Service Reform Act. That created two different entities. One, a completely independent, bipartisan board, the Merit Service Protection Board, to protect merit-based employees, the civil service side, and then Office of Special Counsel, not a prosecutor, but somebody that also protects federal workers. They go hand in glove. They are two pieces of the same puzzle. And Donald Trump has decided to get rid of both of the people that were put in place by Joe Biden and confirmed by the Senate, except under the statute that created the Civil Service Reform Act in 1978 under President Jimmy Carter. He can't do that except for cause: malfeasance, negligence, wrongful conduct, and the rest. Donald Trump didn't like that. He decided to test the limits of executive power and Article 2 power and just fired the two watchdogs who are responsible for making sure that people don't get illegally fired. Judge Amy Berman Jackson, 48 hours ago, issued a 35-page decision in which she basically relied on the same exact two cases as Judge Contreras did, because they're the right cases, because they're dispositive, meaning those cases determine the outcome in this case. One is a case called Humphrey's Executor. I love saying that case, from 1935, in which President Hoover, we have the modern President Hoover now in Donald Trump. He's causing a Great Depression. But the then President Hoover, tried to fire the head of the Federal Trade Commission. And it was determined that he cannot do that without a for-cause justification. That is dispositive of these actions. Now, in between, there was a case from 2020 called Celia Law. It's a law firm. And that was a different angle that the Supreme Court came up with. And they said, if a board exercises executive action in a way that takes away from the president's power and authority and exercises so much executive power that it would be weird not to let the president fire them for any reason, then in that unique set of circumstances, we will not allow the firing. Or we will allow the firing if it's this type of executive power being exercised in a different type of board. But that's not this board. This board is an independent bipartisan board. Let's break it all down. Guess where you are? You're on Legal AF. I'm Michael Popok. I almost forgot to introduce myself. But then again, you're here. There's 500,000 people along with you subscribing to this channel in the last 6 months. I am humbled by it. I appreciate it. And I bring my best every day. Let's get into Judge Contreras' decision on the heels of Judge Amy Berman Jackson's decision. These two like conjoined twins on their way to the United States Supreme Court in record time about the power of the presidency under Article 2. And whether he has the power just to fire people because he doesn't like the looks, doesn't like the whites of their eyes, as they used to say. Let me read to you from Judge Contreras, very similar to Judge Amy Berman Jackson. And he said in particular, the very nature of the Merit Service Protection Board requires that the president not be able, for partisan reasons or just no reason, fire its members. And Kathy Harris needs to be reinstated as the independent chair of the Merit Service Protection Board. Now, first of all, nobody can complain about her job. Everybody agrees she did an amazing job. She had a backlog of like tens of thousands of cases when she got the job. And in record time, in less than 2 years, she got rid of 99% of the backlog. Everybody agrees. It's just that the Trump administration says, well, he doesn't want to work with her. He wants to work with his own person. The fake pouting is my artist rendering. And the judge says, yeah, but Congress took painstaking steps to ensure that the Merit Service Protection Board would be insulated from attacks, partisan attacks by the then sitting president. They created 3 members. Only 2 can be of the same party. In other words, you can't have 3 Republicans or 3 Democrats. They have staggered 7-year terms, so they overlap different presidencies, different administrations. Why would we go through all that trouble if the president could just fire them for any reason and put in another Republican and make it 3-0? Now, the Trump administration, through its Department of Justice, their main argument is executive power, Article 2 power can't be infringed. That it would be a violation of separation of powers if the president couldn't just wake up one morning and say, Kathy Harris, you've lost your job. And Judge Contreras said, look at the nature of the Merit Service Protection Board. It is very insular. It looks inward to protect federal workers. It doesn't look outward. It's not going to stop the ability of the president to exercise his powers for the American people or implement whatever half-brained, dumb policies he's implementing right now to kill American confidence in the economy. There's nothing, not having control of the Merit Service Protection Board or the Office of Special Counsel is not going to stop Donald Trump. I mean, I would like it to, but it's not going to. And Judge Contreras said exactly that. Let me read to you from a couple of pages of the order so you know where we're going. On the Humphreys executor case, the judge said on page 11, Humphreys executor thus remains alive and well, and it dictates the outcome here. The Merit Service Protection Board is a traditional independent agency headed by a multi-member board or commission. And as such, Congress may grant the board's members for-cause removal protections, which is exactly what they've done there. The Civil Service Reform Act envisioned that board would be nonpartisan. Therefore, it must, by its very nature of its duties, act with entire impartiality. The board members serve on overlapping staggered 7-year terms, meaning that the president will have the chance to reshape its leadership, but not immediately. In the Celia Law case from 2020, they found that if the accumulated expertise is what's required, and if the duties are quasi-judicial, that you can't remove it except for cause. So that's all the judge is saying. Put Kathy Harris back in her chair, but if she violates the law, if she does something wrong or bad, you can remove her, but otherwise you cannot. In fact, on page 13, the judge says the very mission of the Merit Service Protection Board and its purpose require independence. In enacting the Civil Service Reform Act, Congress, Judge Contreras continued, exercised its power to regulate the civil service, defining certain prohibited personnel practices to include discrimination, loyalty oaths, coercion to engage in political activity, and retaliation against whistleblowers. Direct political control over the board would have a limited effect on the president's implementation of his policy agenda. It would instead just neuter the board. So the judge got around to ordering the following. Kathy Harris is reinstated on the board. If you want to fire her, this is my summary, if you want to fire her, Trump, you better find cause. Otherwise, she's staying for the duration of her 7-year term. Now, those 2 cases, the one about the special counsel brought by Amy Berman Jackson, will be consolidated, I am sure, and will travel up together to the United States Supreme Court, awaiting United States Supreme Court. Chief Justice Roberts already stepped in last week in the Hampton-Dellinger case about the special counsel, which is basically the virtual twin of Kathy Harris in her position, and said, let's wait for preliminary injunctions to be ruled on by all the judges, because Supreme Court doesn't like to step in on temporary restraining orders because its jurisdiction is a little bit dodgy, a little bit sketchy. When it becomes a preliminary injunction, or in this case, a permanent injunction, then the court has jurisdiction. So now we have it. We have 2 permanent injunctions after final trial, final summary judgment, which are ripe now for adjudication by the Supreme Court. So let's fast forward. What happens there? I mean, listen, you've got pro-president Article 2 people on that Supreme Court. You do. You've got Kavanaugh and Gorsuch and Roberts that worked in the executive branch. They're very pro-unitary president, power of the president to do whatever it wants to do without limitations, even if it's currently being held by a crazy, rogue, out-of-control guy, mad as a hatter person. So there's going to be at least 3 votes, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, 4, Alito and Thomas, to allow Donald Trump to fire at will, regardless of what the statutes say, and find that the statute is unconstitutional as it's being applied. There's 4 votes for that. Question is, does Roberts join to make it a fifth vote, or does Amy Coney Barrett join? Or do they stay firmly in the center right and join the Democratic wing of the Supreme Court and join the other three and rule the other way and start hemming in and reining in and out of control Donald Trump? I'm not sure. It's 50-50 for me right now. This tug of war, this flag in the middle of the rope is 50-50. We'll continue to follow it all right here on the Midas Touch Network and on Legal AF. Take a minute. It only takes a second. Pop out, hit the subscribe button, come right back. And I'll continue to do my reporting and curating for you right here on the Midas Touch Network and Legal AF. Until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories, the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.